Hello everybody, welcome back to another Smart Boy Tristan video. In today's video, we are doing the scenario of what if the Central Powers won World War I. This was voted on by you guys in my community posts, but let's just get right into the scenario. So, before World War I even started, there was the Balkan Wars that happened over here in the Balkan area. Originally, I was going to do a different scenario of the Balkan Wars, but I couldn't find any good maps. So we're just going to start from whenever the event that really sparked World War I, which was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Now, if you don't know, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was an Archduke of Austria-Hungary, and he was killed on June 28th, 1914, and Austria-Hungary suspected that it was Serbia that had done this, or a Serbian assassin that had done this, and so they were very angry at Serbia. So, in normal history, they sent a list of things that they wanted Serbia to do to make up for what they had done. But it was basically an impossible list of things. So Serbia obviously said no, and that is when Austria-Hungary set war on Serbia. But it took them a full month, and they didn't even start mobilization. They, for some reason, thought Serbia would have said yes. So in this scenario, we're going to make it so as soon as Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated, Austria-Hungary starts mobilization of its troops and sets war on Serbia. So now, this sparks World War I. Russia is like, hey, Serbia's my ally, why are you setting war on them? And then Germany's like, hey, Austria's my ally, why are you setting war on them? And then France is like, why are you setting war on Russia? And the UK is, I won't join the war in just yet, but we could be allies, France. So if you don't know, originally in World War I, France had heavily fortified this area because they knew Germany was eventually going to set war on them. That's why Germany in World War I set war on Luxembourg and Belgium, and that's what we're going to have happen, is they set war on Belgium and Luxembourg, and this eventually makes Great Britain join in on the war. Okay, so in this scenario, instead of what normally happened in real life with Germany invading through Luxembourg and Belgium, and then them getting stuck over here with Belgium, in this scenario, they're a little bit too underprepared and are eventually wiped out by the Germans. Now, Germany then sets foot for Paris, eventually almost getting there, getting just about 30 miles outside of Paris. And this is where one of the first major battles of World War I starts. Now, Germany is just about 30 miles outside of Paris-ish, something like that. And this is pretty similar to what the actual borders were on the Western Front in World War I. Just Germany hadn't gotten all the way over here. But this is the Battle of the Marne, which starts trench warfare in the Western Front, which was very destructive and very deadly. As Germany, deciding to be probably one of the biggest jerks of all time, they started using mustard gas, chlorine gas, and many other destructive chemicals and deadly chemicals, trying to wipe out the Allied powers. But basically now this war has turned from a war of getting land to just trying to wear down your enemy. Now over here near Serbia, but now over here in the Balkan region, we have Austria-Hungary declaring war on Montenegro as well. Also, now is the Ottoman Empire. I don't know which of these islands belong to who. Pretty sure most of them belong to the Ottoman Empire. And also, I'm pretty sure Cyprus was Ottoman. And eventually, Romania joins in on the side of the Allies, and Bulgaria joins in on the side of the Axis, and then Greece joins on the side of the Allies. I don't know in what order these battles and they join the war in. This time, Austria-Hungary doesn't struggle to invade Serbia, eventually taking Montenegro and most of northern Serbia before Bulgaria actually even joins in on the war, taking most of Serbia, wiping them mostly out of the war, and starting an invasion into Greece. Now, the Ottomans, well, they tried to do an attack in the Russian Empire, which is why they're dragged into this war. They're going to have to be in this war for the Central Powers to win, so that Russia mainly attacks them and wastes their troops on the Ottoman Empire. Probably gone after this war no matter what. I forgot to add Portugal into the war, so there they are. But for the case of Italy, they originally are on the side of the Allies in World War I. They were relatively neutral and were actually friendly with Germany and Austria-Hungary. Near the war, relations had soured, but for Italy to not join the side of the Allies and ruin the chances of Austria-Hungary's success and winning the war, we are going to make it so Austria-Hungary gives them this piece of land. It's like South Tyrol or something. But Austria-Hungary will be giving them this piece of land in change of them not joining in on the war on the side of the Allies. So here are the new borders of this border between Austria-Hungary and Italy. Now, I haven't really done much about the Eastern Front, but right about now in history, Germany would be about here-ish, and Austria-Hungary be invading Romania, and also Bulgaria would be invading Romania. But in this scenario, we're going to say that the German officers were correct in saying that Russia's army is big, slow, and dumb, and it does take them 6 weeks to actually fully mobilize instead of the normal 10 days that it took them. So Germany is going to be farther in because they don't have to worry about a full mobilization of Russia and Austria-Hungary. And since Romania doesn't have as much protection from Russia, they will also be almost fully taken over. Now, the year is 1915, and Germany sees this little boat called the Lusitania about 18 miles off the coast of Ireland, and they decide to torpedo it. Now, this boat was around 10% American people, and it was filled with American guns, weapons, and ammunition being sent to Great Britain, and Germany just torpedoed it, which makes America upset. Now, they're not upset to the point of war, but it does make them angry that Germany just killed 100 people. Now, Germany says, you were in war waters, and you were sending supplies to Great Britain, so of course I'm going to torpedo your boats. And the United States is like, well, you got me there, so they don't set war. Now, since Russia is doing much worse than they were doing originally in World War I, the Russian Revolution happens exactly 1 year earlier, ousting out the Tsar of the time, and sending in Lenin, comes into Moscow and wreaks havoc across the nation, causing a Russian Revolution. Now, I don't really know much about the Russian Revolution. All I know is that the Bolsheviks win and then are eventually kicked out, and then the communists came in and they made Russia surrender. So for now, they're not quite out of the war yet, but they are very much weakened. They will be pushed into even further by the Germans, Austrians, and Hungarians, and Romania is fully taken over. Now, also around this time is the Battle of Gallipoli, which happened in Turkey. So the British and French and the Greeks all started the campaign into Gallipoli, starting up here. Now, it does go pretty successfully for them, as the Ottomans are currently getting invaded by the Russians. So the Russians are probably somewhere over here on their coast. But eventually, the British, Greeks, and French go island hopping, taking over some of these islands off the coast of the Ottomans. Now, the Ottomans are basically just a distraction for the Central Powers. Now, it's time to talk about the Battle of Verdun, which happened over here in France, in this sort of area. Now, France has been decently successful in pushing Germany back out, considering it is trench warfare, but other than that, nothing else has really changed. But now it is time for the Battle of Verdun, which is between the British and Germans. So in history, I think the Germans won the Battle of Verdun, so we're just going to continue with that, although it does distract them from main France, but they do win in the Battle of Verdun, pushing deeper into France and making tons of British casualties in the process. Now, during this battle, though, the Russian Revolution has ended with a Bolshevik victory, so they decide to opt out of the war, surrendering to the Central Powers, and now the Ottomans can fully focus on the British and Greek campaign into Gallipoli, which they do. And we're going to say that Japan doesn't join in on the side of the Allies. We're going to say that they stay neutral, because in World War I, they actually took some of Germany's bases in the Pacific. Now, since the Russians surrendered, the Austrians and the Ottomans can focus more on Greece and Serbia, starting more of a push into Serbia, completely making them not exist anymore. Bulgaria and Turkey start a push further into Greece. Now, the Brits try and come help them out, but now they're mostly kicked out of the Ottoman Empire, just occupying a couple of islands, and now the Ottomans are pushing into these islands, going island hopping across the Mediterranean, eventually doing a naval invasion onto these islands here, and making a push for Athens. Now, the Battle of Verdun is finally over with a German victory, meaning they have now pushed further and further into France. Now, the United Kingdom is begging the United States to get involved in this war, but they keep saying, no, we're not going to do it, because President Woodrow Wilson is saying that he will not get involved into the war unless there is a direct attack on American soil or threats of attack on American soil. It is time for the Battle of Jutland, which occurred near Denmark. Now, this is one of the few major battles that the Allied powers will actually win. Since it's a naval war, I can kind of show it, but not as well. So the Brits have a lot more naval domination over in this region, also over here in the English Channel, basically all over here. And Germany has a lot of influence basically everywhere else. And the Brits are pushing into this naval waters. Now, their naval fleet is very dominant. It is probably, I'm pretty sure, the strongest navy in this time period. But they keep pushing, and eventually they win the battle. They also push over here. But yeah, that is the Battle of Jutland. Neither side really won originally, but we're going to say the British won, just so they can have a win. Okay, so now it is time for the Battle of Cambrai, however you pronounce it. But basically, the British and French have actually managed to push Germany back quite a bit over in the north, and they have the Battle of Cambrai, and this is the first large-scale battle with the use of tanks. Now, the British in this war in history, they actually destroyed the Germans with their tanks, but the Germans came prepared and they push them back out. Now, at this point in history, it's about a year until Germany's surrender, but since this war is definitely more of a Central Powers victory, they will not surrender yet, obviously. So at this point in the war, it's my turn to be more creative and having wars. Right now, we're going to focus more over here in the Ottoman area as they push into the island of Crete, taking it completely, capturing these islands back from Greece, and eventually taking this coastline area right here, pushing further south, eventually taking most of mainland Greece, and then completely mainland Greece. And eventually, they fully capture Greece as they take Athens. So now, it is the final frontier of this Central Power victory war. The Central Powers are fully in the Western Front, so now there are no more distractions here. All soldiers are being pushed to the Western Front. So now, the Germans are focusing more on coastline so that they can cut off the naval superiority of Great Britain. They are pushing more southward, trying to get to Paris. They try and do a encirclement of Paris, try and siege it. Does not go as well as they plan. They are pushed back. However, they do re-strengthen, take more coastline, taking most of this coastline, and eventually Paris is almost encircled. And it is finally encircled, and it is slowly crushed, and Paris is surrounded, and France decides to surrender. So now, if we look at this map of Europe, it is very decisively a Central Power. It has the upper hand, as it is just the United Kingdom and Portugal against pretty much all of Europe. So Portugal decides to leave the war, which is a probably smart thing to do. The UK decides to surrender to Germany, not wanting their soldiers to die. So let's take a look at a potential peace treaty. Okay, so here's the peace treaty. These lightly colored parts are puppet states. These are German puppet states, and Greece is a Ottoman puppet state. France lost some of its northern territory, and Belgium is no longer a country. Germany got most of Western Russia and some of the Baltic regions, and Austro-Hungary has probably 1.5 times the size, as it gained all of Romania and most of Ukrainian parts of Russia. Now, Russia has been severely crippled as it can barely trade outside of Europe. This very light color means that they are economically dependent on Germany because of the war. So places like Norway, Sweden, Russia, the puppet states as well, France and Italy, and maybe Denmark. They weren't really affected by the war. And I'm also going to create an Africa map after the war, so let's take a look at that. Okay, so these are the borders in Africa now after the war. So Germany owned Tanzania, this Cameroon area. It's not really the current borders, but it's pretty similar to the current borders. And they also own Namibia. So basically they got Belgium's claims on the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Gabon and Congo, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, South Africa, Eswatini, and Lesotho. And they also got Madagascar. And They already owned Togo, kind of, so I just gave them Togo. And the Ottoman Empire got a little bit of coastline from the British, so like Sudan and Egypt. I was going to give them Cairo and like most of the coastline of Egypt, but then I realized that Great Britain would probably never give that up. And they also got Kuwait back from the British. So that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!